So first thing we're looking at for this week, gonna run through the sectors. XLC with the double inside, so you can either really watch this for either direction. So you would just wait for the break of the inside bar on the daily. You would have your call trigger over 56.78 or 73, and then your put trigger below 55.98. And ideally, you'd want to target the top of this three bar. So that's 57.13 for your first price target to the upside, and then your price target for the downside would be 55.43. And that's for XLC. Honestly, trend is still up, still overall bullish. Likely see we potentially can come up to 58.54. And that trade would be invalidated below 55.43. Now for XLY is currently still stuck in this downtrend for the month of February. Looking at this here. I wouldn't really necessarily look to take the long just yet until we manage to break above 146, it's 146.40, and that would be the two up on the week, I believe. Yep. So if we get a continuation on the weekly, then I would look to target the upside. For XLP trend does look healthy. We are in an uptrend. Does look like we're currently breaking out of a weekly downtrend. Here, so XLP does look really strong for some continuation potentially this week. We can potentially target the 73.66 level, and then from there. From there, we look target 74.30 and then up to 75.88. XLE is looking a little rough. We did manage to like get this triple top formation. Pretty much the line in the sand would be if we manage to close below here, below the 67 level, we're pretty much going to get that continuation down. Until we manage to breach 67, I wouldn't say you're necessarily fully bearish just yet. We'd want to break that 67 level to get that confirmation. Otherwise, if you fail to get this placement below that 67 level, it's probably the bottom and you can look to target back long to potentially come back to this 90 range. XLF, we are still holding this monthly / weekly trend line that we got back from COVID lows back in 2020. So kind of interesting to see if we manage to hold this level or not this week. I would just look to play, if you were trading XLF, based on the daily time frame, if you are still in shorts, I would look to target that 29.35 level. But that trade is only validated as long as we hold below this 30.75 level. Rob, you want to take it away?
Thanks, Zeus. Now I'm going to start off with XLI. XLI on the day, we had a nice 2 down here. We did sweep the sell side liquidity. We have been here before, so that's a huge thing that I do want to note. We're going to look at 99.14 to the upside. More on the weekly, we pretty much have a giant doji here. So 99.14 is going to be your trigger for calls to the upside on XLI. To the downside, we do have sell side liquidity at 95.50 and then 94.90. You do have a slight volume imbalance here as well that I can point out. That would be something that you do want to note with XLI. Now let's take a look here at XLB. Really, XLB on the week had a nice two down hammer on the day. So we have sell side liquidity here. We have swept this range before, so it looks like it is a support range here. Kind of almost looks like a price action range as well for this symbol. So taking a look here at the weekly, we have a 2-1. So real easy here. Inside, we want to play calls above 78.11. We're going to play puts below 75.06. 74.77 is the point where I would look as the immediate target, followed by probably you can find a couple of wicks down here. But really, the huge thing is this looks like it's going to flip back to the upside, but if it does flip to the downside, like the squeeze indicator is talking about, this wick is going to be the thing that I'm going to immediately be looking at to have filled, because we've pretty much filled this volume imbalance as well. Taking a look here at XLRE, our real estate ETF, we have a nice outside day here, which is crazy to think about. XLRE has sold off incredibly. Like, we're talking from 42 down here to 34. This is insane. We've pretty much swept sell side liquidity here at 34.38. We do have levels down below at 33.96 and 33.13 as well. But really, I think at this point, you sweep sell side liquidity. What's the next thing you're going to do? You're going to go find buy side liquidity. We have a nice 2 down hammer here on the weekly time frame, 36.64 to the upside. It's going to be our trigger, followed by our first target. It's going to be 37.41. We do have the squeeze indicator that's kind of going against us here, so just keep that in mind. Also, a good amount of sellers are present as well on the weekly time frame. Taking a look here at the daily time frame on XLK, by far the strongest sector so far. QQQ and NQ are just driving it out of the park. You have a 2-1-2 set up. You have your failed 2 down here, so it can be looking to push up. I believe futures are gapping up right now as well. On the week, you have that 2 down, your failed 2 up, your 3 outside bar, your 2 up. The huge thing that I'm going to be looking at is going to be 147.57. How we react to this volume imbalance on the weekly. 151.86 is definitely going to be your buy side liquidity. And then if you wanted to play puts to reverse it back down and play a 3-2 up, 2 down pattern, 141.82 is going to be that trigger. On the weekly, good amount of buying pressure present as well. Now let's dive on in, take a look at my watch list. Netflix is absolutely on one of my watch lists next to Microsoft. We'll get to that one next. But the huge thing on Netflix is we broke this trend line. We have a massive bull flag here. The huge thing that I'll be looking for on the daily is if we can get back above this point here, fill out this volume imbalance that we can see that is present right here on our chart. If we can get through this volume imbalance, targets up to the upside going to be 344.13 and then 363.75. Squeeze indicator is pointing to convergence on the MACD, and then we're going to start moving back to the upside. We saw a heavy volume step in on Thursday and Friday as well. You take a look at the weekly time frame. We've been in a downtrend for a while, and now we're finally starting to break this trend back to the upside. We got that first 2 up after a pattern down and a trend line break. This thing is going to move. The only thing that I would say is this trend line break would be invalidated if we broke 293.54. The next ticker that I want to talk about is going to be Microsoft. Whoop, let me have a drawing on here already, apparently. Next ticker I have is Microsoft. Microsoft has been in this long-term down trend line. It has been lagging to the rest of NQ. So with that, we saw flow come in at the end of close that someone was selling the 280 puts for 414 and it was like $8 million in notional value. That's a pretty significant position. To sell a put, you want something to finish above that price by the target date. So you want it to be above $280. The huge thing here with Microsoft on the weekly time frame is we have a 3-1 pattern, which is your holy grail pattern. We almost made it a 3-2 up last week, but I have a hard feeling we'll probably just trigger the 2 up on Monday, maybe in pre-market, because we're going to be gapping up, I have a feeling. We break this trend line. The first immediate target that I see is 294.18. And then after that, really, well, my bad. Before we get to 294.18, we have this gap here that we got to fill. We have to fill this gap here first, then 294.18. And then after that, if we want to get crazy, we can start talking about this order block up here with a high of 315.11 and a low of 304.33. So Microsoft definitely going to be on that watch. The next one I really want to talk about is BA. On the weekly time frame, this pretty much sums it up. We have a nice double bottom here. We swept sell side liquidity. Is the question, did we sweep buy side liquidity already? We created this inside bar here and held this trend line. So with BA on the week, it's very easy to play. Break of 193.92 below. If you look for puts, the 186.19, a break above 207.86. You're going to be looking for targets at 213.56 and then 221.33. The next one that we're going to talk about is end phase. End phase has been getting, pardon my language, the piss beating out of it. It does not look good. Pretty much every single time frame is red. I would be looking for this to go to the downside personally for me because of this weekly shooter inside bar. Your immediate targets would be 175 and then 167.23 would be your targets. I'm not really looking for this to the upside because with these wicks, seller pressure is definitely aware. Can pretty much confirm that with the volume. The last stock that I'm going to talk about before I leave you guys today is going to be Pawn. I absolutely love this stock. I've nailed it so many times. We have a nice trend line here. On the weekly time frame, we have that 3-2 up, and our targets are going to be 197.62 and 225. If we look at the 1 hour time frame, really there's been a constant bounce and hold of this trend line since we got all the way down here 133. So break of this trend line going down below would not be good and probably would send this stock falling. We would have to break the low of this candle at 186.88. So just keep that in mind. Play longs, keep your stop at 186.88.
All right, so let me go down to lower time frame on Tesla. So Tesla is currently on a 4 hour. We're stuck with an inside bar, also holding this trend line as well. And if we go down to a lower time frame, potentially we might see a gap and go tomorrow. Very, very likely we see a gap and go tomorrow. We ended up breaking out of that downtrend line towards the end of the day. So I am looking at the 4 hour for my trigger off of this trade as well. If you can see, kind of the third touch rule. First touch, second touch, tomorrow. So third touch, likely to be going. See you later. So I am really primarily focused on calls on Tesla to target this 200 level, 260 to be exact, 260. And I would only take puts below the trend line as well. The put trigger would be 187.78, and you could pretty much target the gap fill that gets filled at 183.35. And another trade is NVIDIA. So NVIDIA, kind of the same thing. We've been holding this uptrend very, very well. Currently on the 195, we do have an inside bar, so I am looking to take calls above 167.94, and as you can see, XLK is very strong as well. So it's likely we do potentially get some continuation in tech this week. So I would look to take calls over that 267.94 to target 275.89, and then from there 289.07. I will look to take puts below 264.57, but with the puts, ideally, I wouldn't look to go too far on the downside targets just yet. So first price target would be 162.54, and then if we were to get continuation, don't really think this week necessarily. We really go past 253.87 on the video. And then the last one is mRNA. This is a really good setup. If you look here on the higher time frame, much higher time frame, so we can see this on a daily. We can also see this on a weekly. That we potentially are about to break out of this downtrend line on the weekly. So looking at the 195, we also have an inside bar there. I am looking to take calls above 151.89 to target potentially 155.70. And then puts below 149.91. I am a little cautious this week on mRNA. I kind of think we potentially could see some downside into that fair value gap before we get any continuation back up. So that is something to be aware of. And then with NQ to watch. We do have a volume and balance here on the daily. Where is this level? Right here. All right, so we do have that volume and balance right here on NQ that starts at 1300, 226.50. And ideally, that's where I think we potentially will reject this week. So kind of more so focused on the long side this week. What just happened? That trade for the long side does get invalidated below this most recent low slash this order block that we just created on the daily as well. Below that 1206 or 12,600 level. And for ES, so ES, the thing is ES is lagging a lot behind NQ. As you can notice, we're almost approaching NQ's August highs to where ES is still pretty, what are we? Yeah, 300 points below our August highs. So that is something to be aware of. But with ES, I am looking to potentially sweep these kind of equal highs that we have here on the daily to potentially go into that 4,100 level. And that trade does get invalidated. That trade gets invalidated below 39.37. Does anybody have any questions?
Can you do SPX?
ES is SPX. I don't I don't chart. I don't really look at SPX whatsoever. I rather just look at ES because it's continuous and it tells you all the information that you need when SPX potentially more than likely we're going to gap up. So that's something to be aware of.
But you can't trade the ES on. You can only trade it on. You can't trade it on Weeble or Thinkorswim, right?
Um,